Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a word that's fueled spy thrillers and public panic for decades: brainwashing. The idea of total, absolute thought control. It's the stuff of nightmares, right? So check out this quote: "A living puppet, a human robot." So dramatic. This came from a journalist named Edward Hunter, way back in 1950. He's the guy who basically introduced the word brainwashing to the English-speaking world. And boy, did he paint a chilling picture. He wasn't just talking about persuasion. He was talking about turning people into mindless puppets. And of course, Hollywood just ran with it. I mean, who hasn't heard of The Manchurian Candidate? This movie basically cemented the whole idea of the sleeper agent in our minds, right? You know, the guy who's activated by some secret trigger word and has no idea what he's doing. It's terrifying stuff. But, and this is the big question we're tackling today, is any of it actually real? Can it be done?
All right, to really get into this, we have to go back to where it all started. We're talking about the battlefields and POW camps of the Korean War. This is where the whole concept really exploded in the West.
Okay, so the word Hunter used, brainwashing, wasn't just something he made up. It's a direct translation of the Chinese term "shi now." Now, in China, this referred to the Maoist government's methods of, well, let's call it coercive persuasion. But Hunter, who, by the way, had some interesting ties to the CIA, he used this term to explain something that was absolutely freaking out the American public. So what was going on? Well, American POWs were suddenly showing up in Chinese propaganda films. They were cooperating with their captors. And not just that, some were giving these incredibly detailed public confessions to war crimes they definitely didn't commit. We're talking about really wild stuff, like using germ warfare. You can imagine the reaction back in the States. It was pure panic. But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. When those POWs finally came home, researchers like this guy, Robert J. Lifton, found something pretty surprising. Their thinking went back to normal almost immediately. And then by 1956, the U.S. Army itself came out with a report that basically called the whole brainwashing thing a popular misconception. They found 0 documented cases. So what was really happening? It wasn't some mystical mind control trick. It was good old-fashioned torture, isolation, and just extreme pressure. You think that would be the end of it, right? Army says it's not real, case closed. Well, not so fast. The panic was already out there. The sphere of a communist brainwashing gap was just too big to ignore. So, in a pretty wild twist, while one part of the US government was saying, this is a myth, another part, the CIA, was secretly thinking, okay, but what if we could do it? And that fear, that question, sent the agency down a really dark road. They started asking themselves, if our enemies can do this, shouldn't we be able to do it too? Their answer to that question? It was a program called Project MKUltra. You might have heard of it. It was top secret, deeply, deeply unethical, and it ran for decades. Its entire goal was to crack the code of mind control. The stuff they did under MKUltra was, well, it's horrifying. We know from declassified documents that they were slipping drugs to people who had no idea, unwitting subjects, as they called them. They were dosing their own agents and regular citizens with LSD just to see if they could completely break down a person's will. And it didn't stop with drugs, not even close. Their obsession led them to research some truly bizarre physical methods. I mean, get this. They were actually developing secret little gadgets designed to cause a brain concussion. All of this whole massive, illegal project, was a desperate search for a mind control weapon. So, after all that, after decades of unethical, illegal experiments, chasing a weapon that their enemies probably never even had in the first place, what was the result? A complete and total failure. The CIA finally concluded there was no magic bullet, no reliable way to brainwash someone. The whole Manchurian Candidate thing, it was and is pure fiction. All right, so let's fast forward to the 1970s. You'd think the idea of brainwashing would just fizzle out, right? Nope. The idea was just too powerful. It didn't disappear, it just found a new target. So-called cults. In the 70s, you had a lot of these new religious movements popping up, and a lot of public fear around them. So, the anti-cult movement grabbed onto the term brainwashing as the perfect explanation. It was the answer to the question every parent was asking: why would my kid suddenly drop everything to join this group? And this sparked a huge, huge debate, both in public and in the scientific community. And this really split the experts. On one side, you had some psychologists saying, hey, This coercive persuasion thing is real and it's dangerous. But on the other side, a lot of sociologists who studied religion were pretty skeptical. They made a really good point. If these groups actually had some kind of super powerful brainwashing technique, shouldn't they be converting everyone they met? But the data showed the exact opposite. Their recruitment and retention rates were actually super low. Turns out most people who checked them out just left. This whole debate kind of came to a head in 1987. The American Psychological Association, the APA, was basically asked to give its official stamp of approval to the cult brainwashing theory. They looked at all the evidence and they rejected it, flat out. They said the report they reviewed just didn't have the scientific rigor needed. And that was a huge, huge blow to the idea's credibility in the mainstream. Okay, so this whole wild history, from Korean POWs to secret CIA projects to the cult scares of the 70s, it all leads us to a really tricky question, one that's maybe more relevant today than ever. Where do we draw the line between simply influencing someone and actually indoctrinating them?
You know, a lot of smart people have tried to spell this out, and it usually boils down to a few key differences. Education is supposed to teach you how to think. It gives you the tools for critical thinking. Indoctrination, on the other hand, tells you what to think. Education welcomes questions, right? It loves a good debate. Indoctrination, not so much. It shuts down dissent. And maybe most importantly, education is open to changing when new facts come along. Indoctrination is based on a rigid set of beliefs that you just can't question.
Honestly, a Reddit user might have summed it up best with this one line. It's so simple and so perfect. It just cuts right to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? Is the goal here to empower a mind or to control it? So let's wrap this up. The whole sci-fi fantasy of a magic mind control button, that Manchurian candidate stuff, it's just that, a fantasy. It was never real. But the conversation it started, that's very real. The questions about coercive persuasion, about propaganda, about the ethics of how we influence each other, man, those are more important right now than they've ever been.
Which really just leaves us with one final big question for you to think about. In our world today, a world of tailored news feeds and online echo chambers, how do we protect our own minds? How do we even know if we're being influenced or indoctrinated? What does it really take to think for yourself?